So I'm gonna see if I invitation sent. Uh, oh, you know what I should really do, and I fucked this up already. I meant to add uh this on Bluetooth so that it could be heard on X and YouTube and all that. Hello, how are you?
Where you good? Where you from?
New Jersey.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Where are you all from?
Atlanta.
Atlanta. Oh, okay. How is it down in Atlanta this evening?
Born as fuck.
um, yeah, on a Thursday, I guess everybody's just kind of taking it easy, right? I mean, I got to be up early for work, so I'm just doing this stream, trying to get this off. So, what are you guys up to?
Nothing. We just battling and stuff.
Okay, all right. Um, well, so and is Mike DeDito on right now?
Who?
My friend who also makes content. I'm trying to say it says that he joined, but I can't hear him. So
Oh,
anyway, all right. Well, I really appreciate you guys hopping on, and you all have a great night. She disconnected. So I'm trying to figure out how I get this connected on my Bluetooth to the Roadcaster, so it's not going to sound crazy where half the people on X and Facebook and YouTube aren't going to be able to hear this. But anyway, all right. Thank you very much for joining, everybody. This is the Flip Stream. James Flippin joining you on TikTok and all these other platforms. So I wanted to first of all just start off by saying that the trip home this evening on New Jersey Transit was such a disaster and such a disgrace. And I'm going to get into a specific reason why. For those of you who aren't in the tri state area, you might not know that there's an ongoing issue with the trains. New Jersey Transit's buses and trains are bad, but the trains in particular are a routine disgrace. And today there was some sort of track fire at Penn Station, and people all had to go to Hoboken as opposed to New York City, had to go to New Jersey. And as a result, it all messed up the commute, right? It was bad for a lot of people, especially people who don't deal with this on a regular basis. They don't really know what they're doing. So this old guy was about to activate his ticket on his app, on his New Jersey Transit app. And this woman came through, the conductor, and he's explaining to her, I had to go from lower Manhattan to Midtown, found out I couldn't take the train from Midtown, went back downtown, couldn't take the path train over, so I went a different way to Hoboken. I'm here now, paid all this money. I got to take this different train line and then get an Uber home. He was trying to plead his case. He was trying to make it at least an argument that he shouldn't have to activate his ticket. And the well, the conductor was like totally silent. She had nothing to say. Nothing to say. And he said again, I just feel like maybe I shouldn't even have to activate these tickets. I will. He was like, I will activate these tickets if you really want me to, but I don't want to have to. And again, she was silent. And he was like, again, because the whole everything's messed up, all the New Jersey Transit's all jacked up. That's why I don't want to have to activate them. And she was like, I ain't know nothing about that. I don't know about the shit. And I'm just like, oh my God, man. Like, why do you just like cut the guy a break? You know, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's no reason to be an asshole when the whole system is so bad. Nobody's going to know whether or not this guy actually activated that ticket. Nobody's going to know. Nobody's going to know. But this woman was going to be a total bitch about it, and there was no reason to be. And again, it's like here's the thing, here's the problem I have with New Jersey Transit, Long Island Railroad. Long Island Railroad is about to go on a strike on Saturday. If you work for a government agency, if you work for a railroad that gets people to and from work, you can't go on strike. I mean, I get, and there was this guy who was arguing with me on X about this. Yes, you can. The Federal Railroad Administration and rights, and it's like, okay, fine. Technically speaking, I guess you can go on strike, but you shouldn't. You should have the lack of gall. You should have the understanding of the situation you find yourself in to say, I'm not going to go on strike because, this is getting people to and from their job, and we're not going to go out of business. The MTA is totally broke, but all they do is just invent the new tax and take money out of thin air with congestion pricing. So it's all good. Don't go on strike. And the other thing is these Long Island Railroad engineers, I mean, they make like $100,000 a year. And good for you. I mean, I'm glad that you went to school and got trained up in doing the engineering and such. That's a good thing. But you're taking the train back and forth, my guy. I mean, come on. You're making $100,000 a year and you're getting nice benefits, and you're going to dig your heels in because your raise in year 3 of the contract is 4% instead of 5 or whatever. I mean, get the fuck out of here. This is why government stuff just drives normal people crazy. It's like, look, you have a job, you know your company's not going out of business. Not to say that there's a lot of people that necessarily like, stress about that or really kind of like, lose over sleep about whether or not their companies, some people do, obviously. But, not to say that a lot of people are really necessarily pressed about whether or not they're going to go out of business. But hey, Shelly, but the situation that you find yourself in as an engineer is like, cool, I have a job, right? It's part of the situation. You got to take the train back and to and from work. And that's why this woman, not to say that I can't, look, there's plenty of people who are assholes about not buying their tickets on the train. So I do feel for the conductors in those situations. But on a day like this, where you knew there was a track fire, you knew everybody got jacked up. Who knows why? Especially because this guy didn't really know what he was doing. He didn't really understand the train situation. So clearly he had gone into the city for some weird reason, whether it was to meet a family member, see a friend, have a lunch, go to a Broadway play, I don't know, something like that. Why would you make a big deal out of making him cash the ticket? Why? And he's like, well, my wife is upstairs, so I did both. And I don't know. I hope that she felt kind of bad about herself. But the problem is these New Jersey Transit conductors, man, they don't give a F. And it's weird because like they used to be cool. Like I'm telling you, like back when I was first taking the train 25 years ago, given I'm like of unk status now, they were nicer. And it was older people who I don't know how long they've been doing it. Maybe that's the problem, is that some of them kind of aged out, and the kind and personable conductors are no longer doing it. But yeah, it's no longer a pleasant situation. And hey, guys, I would really appreciate anybody who's tuned in and joined us. If you want to throw us a follow, we'd appreciate that. We're going to be doing these streams every day, usually earlier than this, but around this time, sometime in the evening. And I saw this story. Frank Luntz is a guy who on Fox has done like some of the polling stuff. I think he does CNN too, all about the political polling. He was pointing out that alcohol, and this was according to a study done by Family Studies, alcohol is just not a thing anymore for most people, especially like the younger people. 92% of high schoolers 50 years ago had some kind of drink by the time they hit 12th grade. Now, less than half, 47%. How crazy is that? I mean, 50 years ago, basically everybody had a drink by the time they were a senior in high school. Now it's less than half. So there's a combination of things there. One of it being weed. More people. Hey, Mike, go fuck yourself. How dare you? I invited Mike to join us, as a matter of fact. And now he went so far as to say that I'm putting him to sleep. So he can absolutely go screw, because I invited him to participate, and he's just going to sit there like a bump on a log. But again, people used to drink. They just don't anymore. And part of it's weed. Weed is definitely a huge factor. And this is talk about a weird switch. I just have notes that I've sent myself over the course of the day. This is how I used to do my podcast years ago. Oh, wow. I just got my live restricted. Thanks a lot, Mike. Thanks a lot. My live just got restricted from viewers because they said I was harassing and bullying. When in fact, AI, I was harassed and bullied by Mike. Can you believe this? I was restricted. Now I just want to sit here and not really talk about anything since I was restricted for 10 minutes. Somebody just joined. Well, since I'm restricted, I guess I could talk about the explicit stuff that, this is really messed up. Obviously, most people know this, that what happened on October 7th was not only a terrible terrorist attack, but it was also a really fucked up, depraved sexual thing. I think my cat just jumped up somewhere weird. Beans? What are you doing? Oh, she went in the linen closet. My cat always does this shit. She goes up in the linen closet if it's not closed. She loves to get in there with the towels and all that. But yeah, Hamas did some terrible, terrible stuff. I'm not even going to go into the details, but it's really almost completely ignored by the people that are on the kind of like pro-Palestine side. And look, I'm not even going to necessarily get into the nitty gritty of that particular conflict, but it has to be acknowledged. And then the New York Times put out some article citing sources saying that Israeli prison guards let a dog rape a male prisoner. And it's like, first of all, A, that didn't happen. B, that's so crazy that you would print that. Like, that's so crazy that the New York Times is so dyed in the wool, anti anything when you kind of squint at it and say, well, that's a rich capitalist. Anything that's like that and white adjacent, they have to be against it. So they're like, cool, yeah, the dog story, that runs, that plays. And speaking of stories like that, this is really, really crazy. This guy tweeted out the fact that there's all kinds of stuff going on these days when it comes to the Oscars, right? In order to actually get an Academy Award, you have to be like super woke. You got to have like woke going for you when it comes to, casting, let's say. So Lupita Luongo, is that, I think her name, she was in, was she in Star Wars also? She's going to be Achilles, maybe, or no. The trans woman, the trans Elliot Page is going to be the. All right, good. Oh no, sorry to have you leave, Mike. So anyway, Chris Nolan basically cast a woke number of people to be in his new Odyssey film so that he can win an Oscar. And there's a part of me that's like, is it really that important to you? And then there's another part of me that says, well, that is part of the business model. Or at least it used to be. It used to be where you'd say X amount of Academy Awards, or, oh, wow, this thing won the Academy Award, so you should buy it on DVD. Is it really like that anymore? But I think it's a vanity project, the ability to win the Oscar. So that's why they have to follow the rules, I guess. JD Vance has been all over fraud over the last few days. And one of the things he was talking about in California before he was out in Maine today was how a lot of this fraud is connected to overprescribing drugs as well. So it got me thinking about how much the affordability crisis when it comes to healthcare and people not being able to pay for their insurance or have insurance or pay for that surgery or pay for that drug or whatever is all a part of fraud. And that's also true when it comes to auto insurance. That's also true when it comes to what was the other type of fraud I was thinking of in terms of how much it makes things more expensive? Daycare, right? I mean, like the scams that we saw in Minneapolis, and the national debt, it exists because of all this debt. So it's so crazy when you think about it. If we just cut down on all the cheating and stealing of all this government stuff, we'd be in such better position. And there'd be so much less to fight about, too. It'd be so much less political. It'd just be like, oh, yeah, bad. That's bad. Don't steal. Don't do that. Just do not do that. And JD Vance was up in Maine today talking about some of that particular fraud. Noah Syndergaard's been all in on the MAGA move, huh? How about that? And thank God my Mets are getting off the mat. I mean, it's not even tomorrow. It's May 15th. And, they at least have a sort of fighting chance of giving us something to watch the rest of the year. And it's also good for them. They brought up, as I like to call him, AJ Patrick Ewing, because with the Knicks doing so well and this kid AJ Ewing coming up nicely for the Mets, it's only natural that I would connect the two. So AJ Patrick Ewing. This is something I wanted to talk about. And it's weird because it's happening at the same time that this hantavirus thing either is or isn't happening. Who knows what this hantavirus thing is? But there was a whistleblower that went in front of Congress recently, and he talked about the COVID situation and the fact that Dr. Fauci has been pretty credibly accused of covering up the whole lab leak theory, right? And it's not even a theory at this point. It wasn't ever really. I mean, come on, wet markets or whatever, people eating bats, that's not, it just doesn't make any sense. Whereas the location, Wuhan, where it all started, what was going on there, the Institute of Virology, the concept behind gain of function research, and maybe trying to have like, who knows, with a place like China, and you're kind of seeing it right now, just how weird they are, like in control of their image and their message and what it is they're doing. I think it would just be an insane win for Chinese society if they had been the ones to kind of like cure colds, right? Like, what if the vaccine for the common cold came from China? And that's what that gain of function research kind of was. It was like, can we figure out a way to make it so that we find a cure for coronavirus? Unfortunately, as we all know, very painfully, that process led to the leaking of a highly virulent version of a coronavirus. And then we all lived inside for 2 years. But I'm so insanely vindicated on COVID. It's scary. It's not the kind of thing that I enjoy being like, I told you so. But I remember like it was yesterday being in San Francisco as all this was happening. We landed in San Francisco, my husband and I, as they were canceling the NCAA tournament. So it was kind of like, all right, wow, shit, this is getting serious, right? They're canceling the NCAA tournament. So I remember talking to my one friend and saying, this is all going to be insane, like totally off the hinges. It's the lockdowns and all this. It's coming. It's not, it doesn't make any sense, but they're going to do it, whatever. And that obviously happened. I also called out Andrew Cuomo. Everybody was in love with this guy. And I was like, this guy's evil. I shouldn't say anything because, professional aspects of whatever. But I called him out. I also called out, like I said here, the lockdowns. Called out Dr. Fauci. Everybody loved Dr. Fauci. From the jump, I was like, this guy's a creep. I don't like this guy. He had the little dolls. There was like T-shirts for this guy. It's like, what? Why are we celebrating this guy? He's been in office by the way, he did some weird stuff during the AIDS crisis. So as a LGBTQ, I'm like entitled to kind of feel a certain type of way about him. But that was totally thrown out during COVID because you got to go to the left on this virus. That makes it weird, right? But yeah, Fauci was all over this, denying of the theory of it being a lab leak because his agency had funded a lot of that gain of function stuff. Just crazy. And if you've watched any of this reporting, by the way, from this, you might even be able to hear this. This is where Brett Baer went to a train station, I guess it is, in China, and his news crew parked their van for 2 minutes and they got a ticket for $40 because they have cameras everywhere. And there's been some weird stuff going on behind the scenes with members of Trump's team, like a social Secret Service guy or woman was denied access to an event, and some reporters trampled a White House staffer, like just being totally crazy about trying to get their shot or get from point A to point B. And I don't know. They're so tightly in control of their image. They're so authoritarian. I don't even think people could totally understand how different China is from the United States. But look, I like, generally speaking, what we're hearing from Trump and Xi in terms of like, kind of getting along and cooperation, and who doesn't want that? I'm just noting that the place is totally, totally different. It's a completely foreign concept. And this, again, I'm looking at this thing, New York Post reporting on it. A aide was trampled. A Secret Service agent was kept out of official events. American journalists were prevented from joining the presidential motorcade. And this camera guy accompanying Rush Hour director Brett Ratner uncovered all this. I don't know, just weird. And I was talking about the fraud before, the concept of we wouldn't even have a national debt if not for how many fraud cases we've had. Um, this mass deportation idea. People talk so much about affordability, housing, apartments, whatever. Um, the pied-à-terre tax that's now been passed in New York City, or I guess it's part of the budget if the state lawmakers go through with it, it's been lowered in its threshold from 5 million down to 1 million. So a lot more people are looking at paying this pied-à-terre tax. And it's, going to mean more wealthy people leaving the city. The gap between the haves and the have-nots is only going to widen unless they want to get rid of rent stabilization, which would allow for it to kind of all squeeze down and create an actual market as opposed to just what's going on right now. What if we actually enacted mass deportations? Right? If you actually decided you were going to kick out the people that shouldn't be here by law, what's that going to do to asking rents? Do people ever even actually ask or wonder about that? Because it's so, in a way, sort of politically incorrect that people don't want to talk about it. Scott Presler is on his game these days, and he was outside of John Toon's office talking about how he's going to press the issue of the SAVE Act. Sorry. He's outside the office. A family from Kansas saw him and they were pumped. Hey, they're saying what's up. Yeah, you got to pass the SAVE Act, man. If you actually want to continue to have a country and have real elections, then you can't just have it be where Philadelphia decides Pennsylvania, Newark decides New Jersey with a sprinkle of Camden, Providence decides Rhode Island, Boston, Massachusetts, whatever. You have to actually say all this vote organizing stuff, forget about it. We're going to do real elections, figure it out. No vote by mail. Show us your ID. Then you get to vote, whatever. Very basic. Not a lot of people participate anyway. There's a reason why Florida can just get the whole thing done in a singular day. Pass the SAVE Act. It's not difficult. And for John Toon to act like there's some sort of problem in trying to get that done gets down to the issue that he's not serious about being a conservative leader. And whatever his donors are telling him to do, or whatever his lack of conscience is telling him to do, it's enough. The thing has to get passed. It's the only option. President Trump has talked about it as extremely important, and I'm just, I'm looking to continue to keep that pressure on. I'm glad that Scott Presler is doing that outside of John Thune's office. This was a pretty crazy story. This Indian professor classified a Chinese professor, Dr. Wang, as white in an official report so that he could deny him a promotion. Kind of interesting, right? He knew that if this guy was listed as white, he wouldn't get pushed up for a promotion. And the other guy could push through a bunch of his Indian colleagues as the next one to get a promotion. So, yeah, I mean, it's just kind of fascinating how the anti-white stuff is so dominant in academia. I think it's one of those things where you kind of want to use the phrase, don't hate the player, hate the game. Don't put it on white people that they're doing well at certain things. Re-examine whether or not you even want to be part of that, because that's really what it gets down to. If Dr. Wang has to be listed as white so that you can get your promotion, maybe you're just not doing a good enough job. And we started out by talking about how New Jersey Transit had this delay today, these delays, and I was less than impressed with the compassion put forth by the conductor. Nothing would shock me anymore. I would be the opposite of shocked to find out that some like union flunky had set a fire or something, and that's how this all went down at Penn Station. I would be the opposite of shocked, because what then happens is the cascading effect where people are off for a couple of hours and they don't get their assignment fast enough, and then they're off tomorrow, and then you're going to have equipment trouble, and you're going to have an inavailability of crews, which actually gets listed as equipment trouble or whatever. And here we go. Everybody gets a nice Friday. Everybody gets a nice jump off to their weekend, for New Jersey Transit. And that's the level of trust or distrust that's been sowed among somebody like me who's dealt with New Jersey Transit for so long, that I would be the opposite of shocked if that actually was what was really going on. This is a pretty important thing. The Supreme Court just unanimously ruled that federal law does not shield freight truck brokers from state negligence lawsuits when they hire unsafe trucking companies. So there are these freight brokers that'll say, okay, cool, you need to get your gypsum or your boxes or whatever it may be from Monterey, California to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. We'll hire the trucking companies to get that done, and we'll move the thing for you. But they've been able to sort of hide behind these laws that have kept them from being liable when they hire foreign nationals, or in many cases illegal immigrants, to do this trucking. And then we've seen very tragically what'll happen a lot of the time. These people are completely unqualified to drive, don't even have the right understanding of the traffic laws or the language in which their signs are printed, all that kind of stuff. And in Florida, I think it was Washington State, you had these awful crashes where people were trying to pull like crazy U-turns in tractor trailers and murdering people. So now the Supreme Court says these freight brokers are no longer able to hide behind that lack of culpability. And that's good, because that means that they're just, in essence, going to go totally out of business, and people are going to go to jail if they hire these unsafe truckers. So the pied-à-terre tax is going to lower from just what was a $5 million threshold down to a $1 million threshold, meaning a lot more condos and co-ops are getting hit with this big tax in New York City with the new budget that's going into effect. And wouldn't you know it, Miami, in just the last month alone, has seen more than $70 million in sales from New York City buyers. That's how it goes. You know, this is not 1980 when just because you put pressure on people and raise their taxes, they were going to say, oh, ho hum, this stinks. What am I going to? No, they're going to leave. They're going to go to the Carolinas. They're going to go to Florida. They're going to go to Virginia, whatever. Go to Eastern Pennsylvania. So the issue is, you see it in the numbers now where people, $70 million in sales from New York City buyers in Miami. There you go. That's Mamdani in a nutshell. He's chasing everybody away. And I don't know what he thinks. I don't know how he thinks the city's going to survive when, A, you're not only going to not have the top end earners, but eventually people in just the mid-level are going to be like, I can't afford this. I'm out. So that is a recipe for failure. And to balance this budget, by the way, all you did was delay pension payments. All right, let's talk about something a little more positive since we're almost out of time here. This researcher, this is about a week old, but I certainly didn't get a chance to talk about it on a stream. About a week ago, these researchers announced that they've cut down the amount of time it would take to travel to Mars, a possible shortcut. They were tracking the trajectory of asteroids, and they realized that this one asteroid took a pretty efficient route to get from the Earth to Mars. And they were like, oh, wow, you know, that's something that an aircraft could do. So I think that's really cool. And I'm definitely very interested in continuing to follow all the stuff that's going on with the exploration for Mars. And by the way, speaking of Zohran Mamdani, supposedly he reached out to Ken Griffin, the Citadel LLC CEO, who said he wants an apology after that Tax the Rich video was shot out in front of his penthouse. And then Kamala Harris, she is apparently all about this meeting, No Bad Idea Brainstorm, where they'll discuss abolishing the Electoral College, packing the Supreme Court, making Puerto Rico and DC states. We got to neutralize these red states from cheating. Okay, so on TikTok, what I did was I just played a quick clip where I heard her say it's the No Bad Idea Brainstorm. Here's a good idea for the Democrats. Leave Kamala Harris on the dustbin of history. Or, hey, leave her be. You know, let her do her thing. She could run again, for sure. It's kind of like how, for me, Hakeem Jeffries is such a clown. If this is the best the Democrats got in his various iterations of trying to defend the whole redistricting thing and some of the other stuff he's out there fighting about, I call him Hakeem the Dream. And in this case, I'm actually very thankful for Hakeem the Dream, as opposed to back in 1994 when he was part of ripping my heart out. And let's also hope that the next season does not end the way it did back then. But I'm James Flippin. Thank you very much for joining me. We're going to say goodbye to TikTok first and foremost. And I really appreciate you guys for joining us there. There we go on TikTok. And also here on X, Facebook, and YouTube. Thank you so much for joining. A nice little tidy half an hour on the Flip Stream, Flipping Out Radio, the streaming version. Heavens, very good. How do I end this? Click the live? No.